Okay, I work on integration of migrants, and the title of the presentation is on this field. However, as you know, it's very difficult to study integration of migrants in Italy, integration of refugees in Italy, because they are just arrived, very few are working, and settled. So I will present you some result on the general integration of migrants at city level, from which we can get some lesson that can be used in favoring the integration of migrants. Italy is a recent country, or at least was a recent country immigration. Immigration started in the 90s. And in 2015, we reached 5 million of foreigners, 8.5% of the total population, and 10.5% of the labor force. However, we were very familiar with the backdoor story, so with the boats and so on, people arriving by boat on the coast, and we had 7 legalization. If you look at this graph, here the green or black line is family reunification, but the blue line on the bottom, I should point here. How you point? The red one? Yeah. Okay. The blue line is the planet flow. As you can see, there is nothing in common with the planet flow. I even participate in this planning activity, but there is nothing in common with the planet flow at the flow that arrived. This is very important to recall. So the arrival of asylum seeker now, or refugees as it's called, is just following the path that in the past migrant took to arrive to Italy to work, not as asylum seeker. And this is the same story that all the South European countries experience, because Spain had 4 legalization, Portugal 3, Greece 2. So it's not an Italian pattern, it's a pattern of this type of country that discovered abruptly to be destination country before they were sending country and so on. The migrants arrive in different ways, first from the country from the Maghreb, after we have the Albanian, and after the Romanian, and so on. Now the Romanian is the largest community, the Albanian the second, the Moroccan, we have many more nationalities. Given the type of entrance, if we look at the composition by skill, the red bar is the tertiary educated Italians. They're only 50% of the total population. And the migrants are less educated. This is common in South European countries. If you look UK, it's the opposite. If we look at the brain waste, the brain waste, that means which type of job are doing these workers that arrive with tertiary education. You see clearly that in Italy, even if the people that arrive with a high level of education are few, the brain waste is much higher. So that means whichever education they have, when they arrive, they do low-skilled jobs. This is and this is the story for only the other South European country. So the selection of the back door condition the entrance, condition the type of entrance in the labor market. Even the highly skilled are doing low-skilled jobs. This is important when you want to understand the integration of migrants. If we take the employment or unemployment rate comparison with the natives, you see immediately that the migrant has more or less, male has in the past, the same unemployment rate of the male native, but once the recession started, the last in, they were the first out. So they were, of course, affected more by the unemployment rate. For women, the effect exists, but is less relevant. However, if we look at the employment rate, foreigners are still more employed than native. The blue bar and the blue bar and the green bar, male and female. Why? Because they have a much higher participation rate. So they all want to work, and this is the result. But this is a very rough proxy if we want to study integration. Probably it's better to look at the wage. The wage is a synthetic index to understand if migrants have a different wage from natives. And this is the result of this research I have done myself and with Reza Roxar from the researcher of the MPMC. If you look at the wage and you want to understand the effect, there are many variables: age, education, experience on the job, years since migration. These are the traditional variables that you find. However, if you look at the linguistic distance, you immediately see this is the wage profile of a native Italian, or in Italian from the south going to the north, the green dots. And of course, they start with a higher wage, and the wage is increasing more. The other two are the foreigner with maximum linguistic distance and minimum linguistic distance. So the language is very important, and of course, the prescription will be take care, teach the language, make sure that they are knowledgeable in the language. However, as I told you before, migrants are working low-skilled jobs. If we take the bottom part of the wage distribution, so 1/4 of the wage distribution, where 70% of the migrants are at the low wage, the wage is lower, the story is a little bit different. Here you have still the native. Here you have instead below also the Italians that enter this type of jobs, which are construction, agriculture, housekeeping. They do not have any chance to have a career. So the result would say that probably the language is not an issue, because also the Italian that entered there. So probably we should revise the policy that we are proposing now for asylum seekers, that sending them immediately as soon as we can in the labor market, because after they will be stuck in this type of job. But if we look at the probability of exiting from this type of job, of course, linguistic distance is very important. You have is much likely to exit if you are Italian, you speak the language, if you are Romanian, if you know the language. And so this has important implication for the refugees that usually, as I told you already, also Sweden has changed the migration policy, try to transit them immediately as soon as they can in the labor market, but we have to revise probably the way in which we provide linguistic training. It should be not just months of courses before the entry, but should be spread, distributed along the life, in the line of a long life learning system. The other variable that is very important in understanding the probability of exit from this type of job is the size of the community. And in the research, there is this result. Sometimes the community is positive, sometimes the community is negative, but the larger is the size, the more there is a segmented labor market. So migrants are stuck, a segmented ethnic labor market. So the more migrants are stuck there, and the wage remain low. In addition, the larger the community, the more the migrants speak the foreign language among them. And the less have contact with people outside the environment, and the more easily they have low wage. On the other hand, the community can be a support, because they provide support, contact, they introduce them in another labor market. So we have done, for Italy, with Reza, this type of analysis in which we try to put the community along the linguistic distance. And as you see, we have the Romanian, which has a language much similar to Italians, and on the other side you have the Chinese. These dots here was for the mayor of Prato, because it's Prato on the top there, where the concentration of Chinese is very high. But the linguistic distance is very far. And what we discover with our empirical analysis is that it's not the size of the linguistic distance that matters, but the size of the it's not the size of the community that matters, but it's the size of the far linguistically speaking community. That means Romanians are playing a positive role in helping migrants entering the labor market and make them to proceed. And the other, instead, they have playing a negative role. This is important because there was in the research a lot of confusion, sometimes positive or negative side. This is due to the type of community. This is also suggesting policies to favor the integration. So it's not important only to train in the language or in the skill the worker, but also the family which is behind, the community, to have more integrated workers. This means a complete revision of the strategic linguistic approach, which is not just to work, but also the surroundings of children and so on. And so, just to go ahead, we also wanted to study the composition of because all this analysis is done at province level in Italy. So all the community data are fixed, institution, program, money, GNP, growth, GNP. So we are really able to control only the effect of the composition of migration. So, and now we wanted to study the diversity. Sorry, this is, I already told you. The diversity. There is a large biodiversity. Diversity is positive for innovation, growth, and so on. There are fundamentally two measures of diversity: the share of migrant and the diversity of country of origin among the migrant. If we look at this in Italy, you have two different patterns. First of all, I didn't mention this before, but migrants are mainly in the center north. In the south are very few. Of course, they go where jobs are available. This is the story. But if we look at the diversity, the pattern is not the same. And we want to understand if the role of the province was the same. And what we found is that foreign share, so the larger is the amount of migrant, is positive for native wage, but is negative for foreigner. Of course, this means segmentation. If you have a lot of migrants, there will be in a segmented labor market. I'm not speaking of discrimination, but they are all clustered in different types of jobs, and this is negative for them. However, the diversity, which is diversity of country of origin, more diverse, more nationality you have, more diverse is the foreign population there, has a positive effect, both for native and for foreign. Why? Because the soft and the hard skill of the migrant are complementing each other. Each of them specializes in a different sector. The housekeeping, caregiver, the Ukrainian and the Moldovan, in agriculture, the Moroccan, the Romanian, and so on. And this creates a synergy complementary that favors growth. There is very strong result of the role of migrant on innovation due exactly to this soft skill. I just conclude, to please, we thought, the mayor of Prato. We also did something else, but now to please our chairman, we did also something else. We tried to divide the city to see if there was a different behavior. We are just at the beginning of this, so it's not, but it's interesting. We divided the province in two groups, rich and poor. And what we found that in rich province, the labor market is even more segmented. So the share of migrant has a much stronger negative effect. So are the rich city that drive this negative effect of the share of migrant. In the other cities, positive. So this is important, so to distinguish, to cluster the city according to the characteristics. We also tried the administrative units, so capoluogo di regione, I don't know how you call, but the capital of the region, yes, which is an administrative unit. We were very skeptical, but this, in fact, has very little effect, and in general is less negative, and the diversity is slightly positive, so probably it's not a group. The last thing that we tried, we used the ISPRA GRC data set on creative cities, in which they measure for 17 cities, not for all, and the number of museums, the concert hall, the theater, the cinema, the participation, and so on. We put an index, and what happened is that in this creative city, foreign share diversity is playing a positive role. These are just preliminary results, but this was a nice conclusion for the mayor of Prato, because being him in the worst possible world, he has very high share of migrants, very little diversified, so the two will negative for the integration of migrants, has a way out to become more similar to Florence, more credit. So instead of stressing the industrial production, try to stress the beauty, the monument that they have there. The result, however, is very preliminary, and thanks for the attention.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation.